Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, July 29th, 2026, and today we're celebrating the 8th anniversary of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. 8 years ago this week, we did our very first roundup. And today, after 8 full years of doing these almost every week, travel permitting, we've brought you our thoughts, deep level thoughts on 3 questions we hear from international educators each week, and today is no different. But we're very proud that we've now crossed that 8-year threshold with over 9,000 folks downloading our episodes over the last 8 years. So very, very proud to have been able to touch so many international educators' lives over those 8 years. So thanks again for being here today, either live on Facebook or on repeat on LinkedIn, YouTube, or X, or Facebook again. We are each week we do take our questions that we answer here on Wednesdays from our newsletter called All the SMIE News Fit to Share. Then that comes out on Fridays. And on on Mondays, Friday would be an odd day to put a newsletter out, but on Monday mornings at about 9 a.m. Eastern Time, you can get an email version. I've just dropped the link to that in our chat on the Facebook page. If you're watching on repeat, you can just go to smieconsulting.org/subscribe to subscribe either to the email version or to the LinkedIn version of the newsletter. We make both of those available, and between those two, email and LinkedIn version, there are now 3,300 subscribers who are regularly getting our content through that newsletter each week on Monday. So the LinkedIn version comes out about a half hour before the email version, in case you want it extra early at 8:30 a.m. On Monday mornings Eastern Time. So let's get right to the first question, and it is, are we doing enough to be authentic with our comms? Now, why is this a question that we're asking today? And I think there's always articles that we put out in the newsletter on Monday that we refer to back here on the Wednesday, and today's no different. 2 articles. One article, one webinar. First is an article in the PIE News entitled "Student Storytellers and Creator Schemes Gain Ground in Higher Education Marketing," talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which are the kind of the tail end of Gen Z and Gen Alpha that we're beginning to recruit for. These are the generations that grew up entirely online, who are living through their social accounts in many cases, and who are really seeking those authentic voices that represent brands that they believe in, content that they want to find out more about. And certainly when it comes to higher education institutions, this is no different. In the past, we called these our tour guides, our brand ambassadors, our student recruitment assistants, whatever you might have called it. These are the folks that are your current students who are sharing their experiences on why they like your campus, why they are into your major, what kind of internships they're doing, what activities they're getting involved in, what kind of food do they eat while they're on campus or in the community around your campus. These are the kinds of things, the authentic messaging that is really resonating with future students and they're hungry for. The campuses and institutions that are able to leverage their current students through their various social platforms, through opportunities for current students to share with future students live through chats and online events that you do in person, whatever it might be, having that kind of content is a difference maker. And the PIE News article certainly talks about that, when that the ads, traditional ads that we're used to, even slick marketing ads that our campuses might put out, and polished brand messaging is less appealing, and that universities are turning to their student creators, digital ambassadors, and peer storytelling to build that trust that Gen Z, Gen Alpha the youth of today that are our target audiences for recruitment for peer-to-peer kind of messaging. For those of you who are aware of what we've developed at SMIE Consulting during the pandemic, we developed 6 Ps of strategic international enrollment management. The principles basically that can be applied to any campus, anywhere, at any time, that principles that guide developing strategic international enrollment management. And one of those Ps, one of the most important Ps, is the Peers P. And that means connecting your current students, your alumni, and parents with future students, parents, and future alums. These are the kinds of audiences that future students and parents especially are eager to embrace and eager to learn from and eager to get the real story about what your institution has to offer. So the Pi News article certainly is one that really will kind of goes into a lot of that in terms of why these kind of these don't necessarily have to be the influencer, the massive social media influencers. These can be people who are just at your institution who are telling their story. They don't have to have hundreds of thousands of followers. I know there are institutions that will use and hire, rent out brand ambassadors for their institution that they're paying to promote their school. And to be honest, we're looking into ways that we can do that in certain key markets where we don't have anybody on the ground to do that, or anybody who speaks the language on campus that can really help tell our story locally. So that's something we're really eager to move forward on, is developing this kind of local contact on campus. And someone that I've been in touch with is one of these folks, Mark Bellnagger. He's co-founder of the student creator platform Upper Class. He ticks all the boxes in terms of using your current students in a variety of ways, and they have training programs. They have real templates that can be plugged and played to when you bring these folks on board, and these brand ambassadors can really help drive your institution forward in the key markets that you're after. So Mark is certainly a good one to check out if you haven't already. Certainly peer-to-peer marketing is nothing new. You're aware of the Ambassador platform and others that have Unibuddy and others in the past that have been bought out by larger companies. I know IDP bought the Ambassador platform a few years ago. This new one, Upper Class, is certainly kind of a new generation of online portals for these digital ambassadors to really develop the content and provide some really good templates to help make your case for why that's important. So definitely an article to check out, and if you haven't already read that, certainly do so. Really something that I think is really very relevant for our audiences in this day and age. The second is an article, or actually webinar I want to share with you. It's actually an AIRC webinar. AIRC is the Association for International Enrollment Management. Certainly, it's a member. This particular webinar is available to members, but you can, I think, sign up for it if you want to. If you're not a member, it's $50 for non-members. But it is entitled Designing International Ambassador Programs for Equity, Trust, and Enrollment Impact. So certainly the link to that is now dropped in the chat on the Facebook page. And you can go to AIRC's site to find it, to register online if you're not already a member and would like to attend. So they identify key barriers in the webinar, which is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, identifying key barriers international students face when seeking authentic, relatable information during the recruitment and enrollment process, how to design more equitable international ambassador programs to provide prospective and admitted students with access to current students, alumni, faculty, staff, all of that from diverse backgrounds, apply practical strategies for scaling peer-to-peer engagement without significantly increasing staff workload, and including ambassador selection, training, moderation, and ongoing management, and some other key bits. And I've got folks from Montclair State, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and TrueLeague, another organization that provides those kind of services for institutions. So definitely worth checking out, and certainly something that all institutions should be pursuing with some earnest. degree of honesty, authenticity. Certainly pursuing international ambassador programs should be on everybody's radar. Because for international audiences that we all know the drill, they aren't ones that are typically coming to campus for a visit before they enroll. They're reliant on online campus tours and testimonials and opportunities to interact with current students in a regular basis in their native language to find out, hey, what's it really like for someone from my country to study on your campus? So those are the kind of things that we really need to be working towards anyway, because as much as we like to think as admissions folks, like I am at the University of Akron, we aren't living the experience that current students are. We know anecdotal stories we hear from current students, but to hear it from our students directly always makes greater impact than anything we might be able to say. Likewise for alumni, sharing their stories of how they became who they are as a result of their time on our campus. I'm very fortunate that we're in the part of my development with the University of Akron is we're with our travel starting this year. For every city that I'm visiting, we're doing preliminary research on where our alumni are in those cities, if we have any. As with most institutions around the U.S., we didn't do a good job of tracking our international alumni, and that's not a fault of our institution. It's just a very common problem that many institutions have. So we're using tools we have available, and that's LinkedIn. So I can do a search in Delhi, where I'm going to be starting Saturday night. We've done searches for our folks who have University of Akron on their bios that as attending our institution, who live in a certain geographic area. We've messaged them, we've gotten in touch with them and said, hey, we're going to be having a reception where we're going to be inviting admitted students and prospective students and their parents to an event where we'd love to have you there and help tell your story, your success story to these parents and these students. And we're going to try and do that in every city that we travel to. It's going to be sometimes harder than others. Some cities are not as perhaps common for our graduates to be residing in, but where we can, we're making the effort. With alumni, we want to be able to do that with current students as well, and we're building out the capacity to be able to do that with our current students as well, and being more intentional with getting in touch with them and making an effort to be there with them. So one thing I'm doing, we're coming up obviously in the next 3 weeks. We'll have our new student orientation for international students. We're going to be capturing some new students arriving from key markets and doing some quick interviews with them, capturing their thoughts on how they found us, what they're most surprised about being on campus, and what they're most looking forward to doing while they're here. Capturing that initial enthusiasm and then repurposing that and having that available for future students to see in video content, in written testimonials, and all of that. Doing something in their native language, perhaps. So we're looking and need to be exploring these on a regular basis to make sure we're providing the kind of resources for future students to get the complete picture of what it's like if they were a student on our campus. So that authenticity matters, and we really hope that we all start moving more in that direction. Now let's move on to the second question of the day, and that's one that we're all struggling with. Anyone who has is an ISSS staff member or knows a DSO on campus or is one themselves, you have been suffering the last 2 weeks in deciding, and if you haven't already figured it out, what your institutional policy responses are going to be to the new end of DS policies, the prohibition on changing degrees for graduate students, on changing institutions for undergraduates within the first year, on a range of other limits now that are in place being imposed by the U.S. government. Now, we all know, and the question is, what will the fallout be from the end of DS? We know that it doesn't take effect till September 15th, so there's been this nice, we're 2 weeks into the 2-month period that we're given, 60-day period to actually figure out what our institutional policies will be. Certainly for those of us that start in the fall, start in August and early September before that September 15th deadline, students who enter will still have that DS designation. Only after the 15th will they then have that limit of have an AUD date when they enter the country, and starting programs beyond after the September 15th period will have all the certain restrictions will carry over for students who are arriving now and current students that are already enrolled. they will have for the process when their degree is done, they will need to apply for extensions to do OPT. So that's not, they don't escape that for any other benefits or changing levels, that type of thing. So we will see changes once they're to every student that's international students going to be in the country on an F visa. We will, and J's will be affected in other ways as well. So we know it's going to have obviously administrative burdens on ISSS offices on campus. We know that students will be limited in terms of what they can and can't do while they're on campus. We're going to be a lot of international officers are saying, hey, in some places, if an easy way to extend would be to travel home during the summer, or when you finish your degree to restart a program, or to come in to start OPT, which you'd still have to apply for separately anyway. But extensions can be probably handled through travel. But to be honest with you, travel is not something a lot of international offices are going to be encouraging students to do. It's more of a last resort to resolve potential challenges here at the end of a duration or end of a program where the time is running out. The good news is we have program end dates. It's not good news, it's a small nugget, but program end dates are 2 calendar years, or 4 calendar years from the start. If you're doing a bachelor's degree program, or 2 calendar years from start of a master's program. So there is a built-in period for maybe if they start in the fall, they'll have a summer semester after their second year to potentially finish a master's and then apply for their OPT before their duration of status is over. So these are the kinds of things that ISSS officers are struggling with these days, finalizing policies, figuring out, getting language approved through their general counsels to decide what they're going to be able to say and not say. But I think there isn't an ISSS office that isn't praying for lawsuits to be filed by companies, by associations, higher ed associations, advocacy groups, whatever it might be. These lawsuits are one of 2 ways that can delay the implementation of this September 15th rule. So we'll certainly keep our eyes out and ears peeled, ears out, listening for and watching for kind of anything that comes out on the legal front. The other way that this can potentially be addressed is through congressional review. Congress can act potentially to halt the implementation of this. NAFSA had a campaign that started last week that would notify where we could, as NAFSA members, can send emails with our expressing our discontent with this new rule, end of DS rule, and messages can be sent directly to Congress people. That takes your congressperson and both senators. It takes less than 5 minutes to do, and you can adjust the letters if you choose. And something easy that we should all be doing if we're NAFSA members. There's no excuse, because sometimes our jobs are dependent on what we do. And we should be doing all we can to advocate for our students and our jobs and our profession. So do that if you haven't already. But the end of DS is potentially cataclysmic for what we are. Now, in terms of administrative workload, in terms of burnout, in terms of reputational damage, but then there is a but here. We know the economic damage is going to be huge, and there's been reports, there'll be a news story this coming week that will express a very scary number, that up to $400 billion will be the net economic impact of lost revenue as a result of these end of DS changes that are impacting students, that are impacting J's for summer visits, the lack of visa processing overseas, the consolidation of consulates overseas, the reduction in staff in a number of key locations. We know that half the continent of Africa, you can't get a visa in your own country anymore, so you have to purposefully violate a State Department policy that prohibits going to a third country for a visa appointment. You now have to. You don't have a choice in 20 countries in Africa, or more than 20 countries in Africa. So there's real roadblocks. And there's a Cato Institute article that we've just posted the link to that makes clear that Trump's policies, his new Legal immigration rules are targeting students, spouses of U.S. citizens that are on other visas, that we know that Trump has already cut, and from the article directly, Trump had already cut legal immigration far more than illegal immigration, as much as 2.5 times as much. So that's what we're facing. We all know that he was elected largely to clean up the embarrassing policies of the previous administration when it comes to open borders that led up to 20 million people into the country without papers and without documentation. And that has led to a very strong reaction in terms of all the ICE events that we've seen across the country, and very public incidents that and really shameful things that have happened as a result of that. But beyond that, we're seeing the impact on legal immigrants in the country and legal non-immigrants who've gone about it the right way. We've talked about, and the Cato Institute article mentions it as well, how we see international students are already the most monitored group of non-immigrants in the country already because of SEVIS for the last 20 plus years. We know that lawyers are sharing advice that is certainly along the lines of what we're talking about. Talking about the real challenges for students that travel abroad should not be recommended if you want to maintain your status. Just to regain your status, those kind of things, that having that avoid non-essential international travel if at all possible. That a one-size-fits-all duration won't fit many students' degree programs. We already know that for bachelor's and doctoral programs, and any that have required internships that extend the length of time. So this Business Insider piece really does talk to those kinds of questions. Certainly one that I think is well worth sharing with your general counsel as you develop your approved language that you're able to share with your future students. Certainly one that's going to be top of mind for many of us in the days and weeks to come. Many different articles. We've all had our share of them, and hopefully we'll be able to process some of that, and we take some of the bite out of that with the newsletter that we put out. That you get a good summary. We had 5 articles this past Monday that we put out that summarize what was going on. There'll be probably a couple, 3 more next week that we'll be doing as well. So it's hard to process everything and find the ones that will help be the best to help you make the case. But we give you the short kind of nuts and bolts of what each of those articles are in the newsletter, and then you find the ones that make sense, or forward the newsletter to general counsel with highlighting the articles that are most applicable for what you're trying to achieve on your campuses. So I really think we are in a position where staying on top of this is so important within these 60 days that we have to make a difference, and hope and pray that there are lawsuits that are triggered that will force injunctions or stays on this full implementation on September 15th, and or congressional review that will get rid of, halt the full implementation. And that will probably be I think the most direct way of stopping this is to get Congress involved. And if you're not, and trying both options, obviously, if you're not obviously part of a higher ed association, you can advocate through your political leadership from your state and that are representing you in Washington, D.C. to help fight for your interests, the interest of not only you and your profession, but your institution, your community, and talk about the huge impact these international students have in a positive way on our communities. So that's a lot of what we want to say on question number 2. The last question of the day is, are student visas harder to get everywhere, not just to the United States? And each week we do like to focus at least one of our 3 questions on this kind of perspective-related question. And that's important. Why is that important? Because in the reality of our day-to-days, we don't have time to really keep a grip on what's happening in the rest of the world, let alone outside our states. And it's oftentimes, or outside our institutional walls, oftentimes we're just so overwhelmed with the day-to-day life and issues that we're facing on campus, we don't really have time to process all the news. That's why we put together the newsletter each week. That's why we do the roundup here on Wednesdays. That you can there's an audio-only podcast version you can listen to, where you can get the bite-sized nuggets of what you might want to take as while you're having a walk, taking a stress break from walk. You can listen to the podcast and hear ways that we think that we can adjust what we're doing. I share oftentimes where appropriate. I can share what we're doing at Akron to help address certain situations. But with regard to this visa issue, this is having the perspective of what's happening in other countries is also important. We know and certainly in the past year and a half, we've experienced a fairly regular stream of new restrictions, new limits, new executive orders, travel bans, all the different things that are really placing international students in a very tight box in terms of what the administration is expecting and will be implementing to restrict what our students can and can't do. But outside the U.S., in Australia, in Canada, in the U.K., the other big four countries, they are also facing visa restrictions and reductions in the amount of approved visas in Canada, in Australia, in the U.K., where in the U.K. they have the highest visa approval rates or requirements for visa approval rates. That will influence whether universities can recruit from that country. If they don't have 95 or 90% of their applicants from certain countries, any country, getting visas approved, and their process is very different than ours. We're the only major one of the big four that requires a visa interview in person. The rest, very rare occasions, they might require an interview, but it's usually done digitally. Maybe on the outside chance that you'd have to go in person. I think the Germans do require an in-person one. But we are making our students jump through hoops that other countries don't. So we're already more complicated that way. But we're not as expensive as Australia, not nearly. The average visa for an international student, the fee is now $1,750 for an Australian student visa. That's more than tripled since 2 years ago. So we've seen significant increases in that. We've seen in Canada, their visa denial rates have dropped off, denial rates have increased, approvals have decreased, and a lot of them are for what they now call preventable reasons in Canada for bad financials or incomplete financials. And we'll share that link. That was a study done through Apply Board in Canada, which has very close ties to IRCC in Canada, that is kind of the immigration authorities there. So a lot to process on the international ed front, and certainly one, it's not getting less complicated. Certainly there are new challenges that we're facing every day when it comes to international students and our ability to come into the country. We're all holding our breath that visas get finalized in certain key markets. We just heard today that the consulate in Accra, Ghana is closed for renovations for the next 3 weeks. So, which will put anybody who hasn't already got a visa to come to the U.S. out of the range of possibility of joining this fall. Odd on the timing on these things is just no prior notice really on those fronts, and students are getting appointments canceled that might have been in place beforehand. So we're seeing some real issues developing here. So not a pretty sight, but one we'll certainly keep on top of for all of you, and want to make sure that we are doing our best to keep you in the loop on the challenges we all face. So that's all we have for you this week. Just a quick programming note. Next Wednesday, I will be in India with faculty and our provost from the University of Akron. So I won't be able to do a live next week, but certainly we'll return on the 5th. Let's see, 12th. I think it's the 6th, 13th. I think I'll be back Wednesday the 13th, if that's the Wednesday. So we will be back soon on the 12th. Excuse me, on the 12th of August. I'll be back with you live from the home office. But until then, take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.